As usual, I will do some introductory remarks and kind of set the stage, and then I'll hand it off to you.
Perfect.
All right, and here's everyone just rushing in, getting themselves oriented. We were just chatting about how with Zoom, you know, when you enter the Zoom room, there's this moment of disorientation, you know, getting the microphone and the mute and the video and getting everything working. So it's kind of like walking into a classroom that's already full. You know, you're the last one there and you walk in, everyone turns and looks at you and is like, ah. Those of you that have taken classes from me in person know that I always play music at the beginning of class to try to smooth over this kind of awkward transition. And I tried doing that in the early days of the pandemic on Zoom, and it really didn't work very well. So I've stopped trying. I'm sure there's a technical fix to it, but well, we're about 4 minutes in. Let's go ahead and get started. I know some people will be filtering in, and had a couple of folks say they can't be with us tonight. And that's, you know, it's Valentine's. You guys are spending your Valentine's evening with us. So I don't know what that says about us, but I'll leave that to you to figure out. We are blessed tonight by, since it is Valentine's, we have a presenter tonight who is a lover of public transit. How's that? Is that a good intro?
Oh yeah.
I think that's good. And
could
I know
be creepy, but
yeah, maybe it is. Okay, it's just a strong liker of public transit. But before we get into that, I just wanted to let you know about the rollout of the evening tonight. We'll, as we have been doing, we'll have about an hour for presentation and Q&A and discussion on that presentation. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and work on our projects. What we'll do is we'll start off. I have a short presentation of my own that I'd like to offer for you for your consideration, and then we'll send people to their small groups, the same ones that we had last week, to consider some of the things that I'm presenting in my presentation and to hopefully move beyond that. So that's the general order of the day. Pretty simple, not very complex, but thought I should give that. As I said, we have a special presentation tonight. Every presentation is special. Tonight's special presentation is GJ LaBonty, who is currently the manager of the customer experience team at UTA. He just got done with his stint as the interim planning director. He's been with the transportation industry or planning related issues for more than 30 years, has degrees in architecture and in geography, particular emphasis in GIS. GJ, while he's been at UTA, has been the project manager for a number of the regionally significant transit projects in the Wasatch area, including the commuter rail project to the south, Front Runner South, and the Sugar House streetcar line. So GJ now works with a team that is tasked with coordinating service planning and capital development departments on projects that affect customer experience. GJ, it's great to have you here, and I know we're all looking forward to your presentation. You have the microphone.
okay, thank you, Keith. Well, let's go to share screen and see if this works. Everyone can see that? Okay, hearing no objections. Yeah, as Keith mentioned, in one form or another, I've been involved in planning for most of my career. It's transportation and planning, and it's looked different in various forms. I did a stint after I moved to Utah here for the England trucking company. I was at one of their logistics planners, and so I got to know that side of that industry, and then went back, got my degree, and then ended up here at the Transit Authority in about 2002, right after the Olympics. I got an offer the month before the Olympics, and nobody was around to train me. I guess everybody here was on all hands on deck kind of thing. Anyway, it's been a great run. So yeah, plus or minus about 18, 20 years here. I was involved in strategic planning for the most of my career here. So I'd say for about 15 of the 20 years. And just recently took on this job with customer experience. But I have that background. I have the strategic planning background that you're hearing so much about in the other presentations, which is the long range transit planning. So the 30-year horizon for not just transit, but transportation planning, long range plans. And is that my feedback there, Keith? Can anybody else hear that? No? Okay, I'll continue. So I'm just leading off with that, how my knowledge of the things I'm about to talk about it relates back to what this academy is all about. So stop me at any point in the presentation with questions. I have had a lot of fun putting this presentation together. Got to go back and kind of research a little bit more about the history. Keith did a brilliant introductory presentation at the start of this course, and I actually stole some of his images and slides, and so you'll see them again here in this discussion. So again, going back to the history, the history of transit in the region. I didn't know our interurban rail lines went as far as they did, but they at one time stretched from Payson, Santaquin, and Payson to Preston, Idaho. You kind of see a map there of the network, and then you can see a picture of what those cars looked like. That would be the equivalent of our commuter rail lines, doing that city transportation, that travel. And then of course the local transportation is kind of what you see there on the right hand side, which was the Salt Lake City streetcar line run by Utah Light and Traction Railroad back in the 40s. And there's a story coming up about that, and Keith alluded to it a little bit in his presentation as well. But you can see it's Back to the Future again. I think that is, well, that's Fifth South and Main, with a streetcar coming right at you. And so we've gone the full circle of embedding track into our downtown streets to operate the streetcars. Then in the late 50s, a bus system was introduced, and there's a conspicuous handoff between the rail and the bus lines, and that I'll talk about again in a minute here. But this is one of the original Salt Lake City lines. That was the name of the company that ran the bus network, buses. And that particular picture is from our bus yard. We own that bus. We still have it. We keep it operational. We run it in parades. Um, it's a fan favorite. But so Salt Lake City Bus Lines was the last privately owned bus company along the Wasatch Front until UTA came along. This is kind of where the battle starts after World War II. You know, the people returning home from the war had more leisure time, had access to vehicles and competition, and I put that in quotes, and I'll tell you why in a second here, reduced the need for the rail line system or for the rail system. And then this is the scandal that Keith talked about in his presentation back in 1949, where there was a conspiracy among them, the major auto parts producers, from the car manufacturers to the tire manufacturers to the oil companies, conspired to buy up rail lines, mostly streetcar rail lines, and in some cases just burn them to the ground in order to ironically promote the bus system, which, you know, would obviously take advantage of those their products. So they were convicted. You had some nominal token of a fine or something like that, Keith. I can't remember, $5,000 or something each.
That's it.
Yep. But well, the picture in the lower left there, third and third, that was the world in 1948. Cars coming into their full presence on the American landscape. And then what followed that was, you know, obviously the construction of the freeways. The example I show on the right here is the interstate system. The I-15 interstate system had already been constructed. So what I'm showing here is actually the east-west interstate from about 21st South, you know, over to Parley's Canyon, as it's being developed. The big picture in the middle there is kind of the swath that was cut across the valley through Sugar House in order to plan and build this particular freeway system. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but, you know, it came and it's here and it's part of our transportation infrastructure. Finally, the history. So this is how it all kind of boiled to a head in 1940. Airways Motor Coach was the predecessor to the Salt Lake City Lines bus operating company. They sued Utah Light and Traction, trying to prevent extending the bus service into Salt Lake County. Light and Traction essentially lost all the way up to the Utah State Supreme Court. They found in favor of the motor coach lines. And Utah Light and Traction eventually received public utilities approval to discontinue the streetcar. I guess approval is probably not the right word, but were authorized to discontinue the streetcar service in the Salt Lake area in 1941, and then the last train ran in May of that year. But the irony is that for all of the manipulation that the automobile and the product manufacturers put into the promotion of their products, you know, tires, vehicles, fuel, in order to get more buses than streetcars, the bus ridership just tanked. And by the late 1960s, that Salt Lake City Lines bus company had kind of run its course. It was out of business. So where do we come in? 1969, state legislature passed the Public Transit District Act the following year, and it's fascinating to read. It's all still on the books. It gets amended and updated, seems to me, like annually. But yeah, 1969 we were established as a special service district. It had to be, in order to provide the service, the municipalities or the counties had to approve us coming to provide that service for them. And so Sandy, Salt Lake, Murray voted to form the first ever transit district in the Salt Lake Valley. And at that point, UTA purchased what was left of the Salt Lake City bus lines assets, including their vehicles and the downtown garage. 73, they expanded to Weber and Davis, 85 to Utah County. And that's kind of what our service area looks like on the far right there. And WFRC and MAG, I know you've heard about those. Those are our metropolitan planning areas. They're just designated by the different colors. So that's 1,400 square miles that you're looking at there. We don't provide service into every nook and cranny of each county, but we do, we're available to provide service to about 2.6 million people along the Wasatch Front. So then the next obvious question is, where do we get our funding? So again, as part of the same law that created us, there's language in there about a county or municipality that wants to establish the public transit in their community may provide funds for the operation and maintenance of the district. And then following that act was the local option sales tax act that spelled it out a little further to say city, county, city, or town may impose on themselves a local option sales tax for the development, construction, maintenance, or operation of a system for public transit. And so then that leads to the breakdown of our funding sources. You can see 2/3 comes from that sales tax across our service area. And those are all voted and approved of by the voting public. That's the it's typically levied at a county level, and the counties authorize us to put the sales tax implementation on a ballot, and then the public has a right to vote for or against that sales tax imposition. The rest of the money you can kind of see there. I think people are sometimes surprised to see how little fares actually bring in. I don't mean to minimize it. We're going through our free fare February right now, and there is a cost. The fares aren't negligible. We bring in, I think it was $55 million a year in fare revenue. But as a proportion of our total operating budget, it's relatively small. We do get some federal infusion. I do want to mention at this point, last year was the first time ever that the state actually allocated funds on behalf of UTA, capital funds that they want to see used to improve the front runner system, mostly going towards the double tracking of the system up and down the Wasatch Front. If you've had the chance to ride our system, our front runner rail line system, you'll notice that there's sometimes a little delay when trains need to pass each other at sidings. And that is because when we built the system, we did not have enough land or right of way to construct an entirely double tracked system. So the decision was made in favor of getting it built rather than waiting until the entire double track alignment could be purchased. So that's what the state legislature has authorized the funds for, and I think it was on the order of about $300 million.
GJ,
Uh-huh.
can I ask a question about this? I'm
Sure.
assuming this is the operating budget that you're
No,
showing here, or is this also capital?
no, this is not capital. So well, actually, I should say it is. It is. This is our budget. This is the total budget for keeping things running around here, and that includes state of good repair. You know, we have to kind of pay for our upkeep of our system, and somehow funnel money to our capital development program. And I'm not going to go into much detail on that. Ted, I believe, talked a little bit about the what do they call it? Fiscally constrained long-range transportation plan. These dollars go into that plan for both operations and capital development. So yeah, no, it's encouraging to have our legislature acknowledge how important transit is to the for lots of different reasons: economic development, for jobs, access to jobs. We feel like we're a pretty critical piece of the community fabric, and the state legislature is now kind of agreeing with us on that. Governance and guidance. Again, we live under the law. We live under that 17B2A8 law that created us, the Transit District Act, and it's been updated, amended, changed over time. The latest adjustment back in 2019 was to reformulate our Board of Trustees. It had prior to that been a body of about 16 part-time board members, and they came from a variety of different sources of people recommending the names. It was geographically broken down. But in 2019, when I say they, the legislature decided that we would be better served by a 3-person board, and they are appointed as well by the governor. They serve at the pleasure of the governor. They serve different regional capacities. They serve the different areas along our service area. They serve 4-year terms, and they're full-time employees. I think that's probably the most interesting twist of this new law, is they literally sit in the opposite corner of this building I work in, and so they're full-time employees. They have offices here in the headquarters, and that's their job. So then under that, there's a local advisory committee that advises the Board of Trustees. It's a little bigger committee, and they are part-time. There's 9 members from across the region. They do things like set the compensation for the board members, for the Board of Trustees. They adopt the final Board of Trustee recommendations from the governor, and then they represent their areas, their geographic areas. And then the Citizens Advisory Committee came about in 2018. By law, this committee, when they restructured the board to be the 3-member board, they also stated in that legislation that there needed to be a Citizens Advisory Committee made up of 12 citizens. So people out from the general public, to provide community perspectives and to inform our priorities, plans, and decisions. And so they would be sort of a more tactical version of the local advisory committee. So local advisories kind of is made up of elected officials, and then the Citizens Advisory Committee obviously is just general citizenry. But I wanted to highlight what the Citizens Advisory Committee has done in the past. Besides, they've done a number of different things. They're brought on board to sort of as a sounding board for our own ideas, but also to bring ideas. And so that example at the bottom, one of the first meetings where we sort of did a brainstorming with the Citizen Advisory Committee, what did they think was lacking, or what did they think UTA could do better going forward? And that was one of their recommendations, was to get more information out into the hands of the customers, sort of on a real-time basis. And from that evolved the adoption of this transit app that, if you've ridden transit, you might be familiar with. But these notifications, if you have subscribed to a route, and by subscribe, I mean you can choose which routes you want to receive information on, so you're not getting bombarded with every single delay and detour. So if you subscribe to the Route 220, you would have gotten this notification about a detour back in, I don't remember when this was. I think this was in 2021. To your phone, you're getting this real-time information pushed out to you, so you have the latest information. So you're not walking out to your bus stop, kind of hanging around, wondering when it's going to come, and it's never going to come. So, and then the last one that I really wanted to harp on, or not harp, but to give a great shout out to, is this Committee for Accessible Transportation. And I know this is sort of a deviation from sort of I think the direct purpose and vision for this class, but I wanted to just bring all of these forward because in the end, really, this is what we do at UTA. We plan and we work with constituencies to bring about service, to bring about changes, to follow laws. But in the end, the service that we end up putting on the road is the result of the planning that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. But so we're really excited. They began, wheelchair service in '86, and it evolved to a full-fledged division of UTA for paratransit services. We work closely with our service planning group to improve bus stops. And so you see kind of on the right-hand side there, a before and after shot of what we are legally bound actually to do. If a stop has been established in a non-accessible location, it can remain, it gets grandfathered into the system, but as soon as we decide to either move it, make an improvement to it, it has to be brought up to full ADA compliance. And that stop on the right is kind of what full ADA compliance looks like. This project in the upper left was one that my team worked on over the last year, and that was to better identify the priority seating areas on our buses. Right before this change, all of the seating on the buses was the same color. And so we worked with our fleet engineering on the procurement of the next round of buses, got some sample seating ideas in, worked with this Committee for Accessible Transportation. They absolutely loved it. And so now the rest of the seating in the vehicles is kind of that dark blue, and the seating in the priority seating areas is subtle gray with the International ADA symbol. And then finally, probably one of the proudest things me and my team have done is just basically improve the wayfinding out in the system for people. On the lower left is kind of what our old flag and pole systems used to look like. The next one over is kind of what they look like today. They're going up slowly. You won't see these at every single location. We've got route information in timetable cases, and there's Braille along the bottom of those cases to help people with visual impairments. And then this, we've graduated from the traditional perforated galvanized steel poles, which you see everywhere, stop signs, speed limit signs, school crossings. That's kind of the standard pole design. We went with this 8-sided powder coated pole design so that somebody with a disability who's looking for the bus stop can hold that pole, can reach out and touch it and understand that it's different than your standard street signage design poles. And so that's what I wanted to do, is just bring everybody sort of up to speed with the behind the scenes, the guts, I would say, of kind of what UTA is doing every single day relative to improving the service, improving the customer experience, improving accessibility for people. Before I sort of got into this next one, which is the planning, right? And again, you've heard this from Ted. You heard a little bit from Andrea, Julianne. We all sort of live in this world. I use the funnel as the example because we all start with that, the vision that Ted talked about, the 2050 vision. Then we kind of synthesize that down to the regional long-range plans. They get synthesized into fiscally constrained projects and programming, and then ultimately we end up with the roadmap for our service plans. And then, yeah, you lather, rinse, and repeat every 4 years. It's a good system. I think it takes into account a lot of the regional needs for transportation. And sort of what I wanted to do with the first half of my presentation was sort of just show what comes out at the bottom of the funnel, basically. When you're talking about service development, includes all of that stuff that I talked about, from accessibility to wayfinding, visibility, ease of understanding the system, providing as much information where and when people need it. So yeah, that's kind of where how it fits into this long range planning process. A couple of years ago, my team, when I was actually in the strategic planning team, we developed, back then it was 5 years ago, so we developed a 2040 strategic plan for the agency. And this was when Laura Hansen, member of this group, was my boss at the time. And she had a friend who was a fabulous illustrator. And so we collaborated with him on this to sort of come up with an imaginary dream city of accessibility, right? Everything from pedestrian mobility, included the freeway. Freeway got its time in there over on the side. The rail, the cars, it all got included because we realized that it can't be a silver bullet solution on that. So it's kind of a visionary sketch that we pulled together for our 2040 vision. That's all I have in terms of the presentation. Oh, I'm ending with this one because I don't know how many of the people are actually meeting on campus, Keith, but
we're scattered all over the Wasatch Front. And,
oh, are you?
And beyond too. We've got some folks in southern Utah that are part of the group.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, if you're not frequenting the campus, then you won't see this, but these are the new bus shelters that were installed outside of the Union building. They rebuilt the bus bays a year ago, and then we came along behind them with these shelters with the additional lighting. But so yeah, I can stop there for questions.
Very nice. I've noticed some crews out installing photovoltaic cells on the roof of bus stops, I assume to power some interior lighting. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. You saw the one application that we have. We bought we bought one. We didn't want to, we want to be prudent and
You made sure to put it where I would see it. I appreciate that.
Fiscally responsible. I think it's on Second South, right up there by like 13th East or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, and we picked a very dark. It's got tinted glass, so it's dark in the daytime, but it's even darker at night. And so, yeah, it's one of my team's projects. We think it's working. If you're driving in the area, you'll see it lit up at night. But yeah, we plan to, if that's the right product, that's kind of what we're really testing, is making sure that the product is the one we want to go with. We'll roll that out in as many places as we can, as many south-facing shelters.
Right. Good. Well, how about let's maybe stop sharing the slides so we can see each other a little bit. And Vaishali has a question that's in the chat. She's wondering about ridership by youth 16 years and younger. Any data on what proportion of riders are youth, and also any special considerations for customer experiences for youth?
So excuse me, I don't remember the exact quantities. We did have a survey a few years back. It's not a large proportion. I'm going to venture a guess to say 5 to 10% in that age range, mostly because they're still in the K-12 bracket. We are actively pursuing relationships with school districts. We really do, and they also agree that it's an excellent way to provide transportation, where we go places that a lot of the school district busing plans can't cover. But in terms of the programs, we do have some, like the summertime, I think it's called a rider's license, and it's available to everybody 16 and younger, might even be 18 and younger, for $45 or something along those lines. And then you can ride all summer with that pass. We provide, we've had partnerships with people like Lagoon, for their summer employees to get, and I don't think I've ever seen one that was older than 16. So, and a lot of them don't drive. And so it's a nice way for them to get to and from work. So I know that's not it might not be a satisfying answer, but we're aware of them. We're aware of the youth and the riders. And I think they're more willing than your average adult to try it, mostly because of the freedom I think that it gives them.
Yeah, not being tied to their parents' minivan,
right,
and their schedules. Yeah. So Sarah, what's your question?
Thank you, Keith. I had a question about community feedback, and I was just wondering how you get ideas on how to improve, accessibility, feelings of safety, information, all of that.
The first place we would probably go is to that Citizens Advisory Committee. One of the criteria for being a member of that committee is that you have to ride. So you have to use the system on a regular basis. And so they have firsthand sort of knowledge or experience with lots of those issues, and they bring those to our attention. The other half of that equation is that we have just recently formed a community engagement team here at UTA that is working to proactively engage communities of color, different ethnicities, races, any of the communities that may not quite have the access to information or may not be comfortable asking for help with access. So it's a great team. I love what they do. And so they do things like they'll do some onboard surveys. They do, they'll push out QR codes on our social media to come and do like a 5-question survey. And so they're trying to keep their finger on the pulse kind of what especially disadvantaged communities need or want.
So Alec is asking, what projects are you most excited about in the next 5 years? What's got you all juiced up?
Well, I think if you want to talk like big, Mars, type launching for the outer galaxies, I think that front runner double tracking is kind of a game changer. It will open up the Wasatch Front to high speed, so we can maximize our speeds on those rails. We could potentially get more frequency than we're serving right now, and by that I mean even more frequent than 30 minutes. Right now it's 30-60, 30 minutes in the peak and 60 minutes in the off peak. Electrification is one of the goals for that particular project too. If you're kind of environmentally sensitive, you've probably noticed our emissions from our locomotives isn't particularly environmentally friendly, but yeah, that one is really probably my favorite large capital project. Down at the street level, my team is working currently on literally as we speak, installing real-time departure signs, sort of like what we see on tracks in Front Runner, but we're putting them up at the bus hubs. Yeah, six different bus hubs. We'll have this real-time bus departure. So that's my other favorite.
That's
It
fantastic.
looks like, I was gonna say, it looks like Tim has his hand up too.
Yep. Let's
You want to answer
Tim.
your question?
Tim, let's go for you now.
I just had a question. I know there was proposed legislation, maybe changing funding, like what is it, HB 322, with UDOT taking, I guess, maybe larger projects or something. How would that change what projects are done, and how would that affect?
It's still too early to say. Right now, the language reads that they want to take over management of construction for projects where the state has an investment. So you can imagine something like this front runner double tracking. They've sunk some considerable cash into that. So they want to oversee sort of the construction management of that, which is fine. They're good at that. They're good at building stuff. So I don't know that it really affects anything that we would see on the ground. Whether or not they can deliver faster or cheaper is yet to be seen. But I think there currently is only like 5 or 6 projects that they have money in that they're interested in sort of, I'll call it helping with construction oversight.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of a job they do compared to front runner construction, for example.
Yeah, it's an expertise thing that, building highways doesn't look anything like building railways, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Troy, what's on your mind today?
I just had a simple question. Well, during the pandemic, how much did ridership go down, and how close are we to pre-pandemic levels? And then the third part of the question is, I know in our neighborhood we had a bus that still service hasn't been restored yet. Will most of the old buses that got sidelined, will service be restored fairly soon, or?
It's a great question. We really took it hard. We lost In some cases, 70, 80%. I mean, we were hemorrhaging. Just, there was nobody going anywhere. Students weren't going to school. People weren't working downtown. Our key demographics, our riders, just weren't going where they used to go. It's coming back. It's I can't remember the numbers. I can probably share a chart. I want to say it's about half of that. So we might be back up to 40% of pre-pandemic, 40 to 50% of pre-pandemic numbers. But I will say this, that once we lose them, it's twice as hard to get them back. Now I think I saw somebody in here about past programs. You know, the universities and a lot of the companies like the church office and can't remember the investment company downtown, but there's lots of companies that subsidize their passes for their employees. So they'll probably be more likely to come back than the people that have to choose, you know, am I going to try transit again? So we're waiting to see, but it is positive. The trend is positive, slowly moving up, and we're no different than any other city. It's the same if you looked at the big ones to the small ones, you know, the LAs to the Denvers. We're all kind of in the same recovery mode.
Thank you.
So Philip is asking about what we used to call, when I was on the board, the equity analysis. Are the operations budgets proportional to the contributions, especially sales tax contributions, on a county by county basis?
Yes, that's the short answer. The money can't leave the county that it's generated in by law. So, but as you can imagine, you know, our buses don't stop at the county line and transfer people over to the next county bus. They they travel where they need to go. And so that is actually mathematically calculated vehicle miles that are within the, you know, say, I can't think of another route. There's not as many intra-county routes as we used to have, but the rail line, let's say Front Runner. Yeah, it's the vehicle miles that would be generated in Salt Lake County, operating costs, miles and hours for that section of service, and making sure that Davis County isn't receiving sort of Salt Lake County sales tax funds. So I know that's kind of convoluted, but yes, we're very aware of that. We get called by the counties on that a lot. And the last presentation that I saw that I actually helped prepare, we were in like 1 to 3%. We call them net receivers and net takers. I don't know what you would call that, but one year a county might be a net receiver, and next year they're a net taker, but it's always nominal.
Right. GJ, I saw in the Trib the other day that there is once again a bill to make UTA free all the time, no fares. So we're doing it for a month right now, but we've got a bill that is, I don't know where it is in the process, but if it proceeds, it would make that situation permanent. And do you see that happening anytime soon? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have opinions that I'll keep to myself, but there's an official study going on right now. My opinions are positive, by the way, that I tend to agree with my boss, who feels that in some ways fares are a barrier to access. But we have a joint study going on now. It's being funded by us, UDOT, Mountain Lands Association of Governments, and Wasatch Front Regional Council. Mountain Lands is managing the study. They expect to be completed sometime late summer, early fall. And it's evaluating all of the impacts of a free fare system. And that includes not just revenue, right? Because a free fare system isn't really free. There's impacts to the system. If you double your ridership, you've just increased the maintenance on facilities, on platforms, buses, trains, security. I don't know what that will look like in terms of monitoring ridership for protection, safety, those kinds of things. There's still operating costs associated with the vehicles. I think I mentioned that we're probably bringing in about 50 to 55 million a year. So yeah, they could cover that if the state chose to. But there's a premium associated with that, and we don't know what that is just yet. So my hope would be that the legislature would at least wait until they see what the results of this study are. There have been many attempts by agencies around the country. None have succeeded. The smaller ones have, Suntran down in St. George and Cache Valley Transit up in Logan, they do it, but they have a completely different model in terms of their funding and revenue. And I think their operators are all college kids, and so yeah, we'll wait. I hope we will wait to see that. I think in the end, if it passes and the governor signs it, it's going to be at least a year before we would be prepared to sort of open the doors on that.
Any prediction on when the study will have some results to report?
I think the end of the summer. I think the contract is out for proposals right now. So yeah. Yeah, you've hit a lightning rod.
Well, that's what I do.
That's I'll add one more facet to that discussion, is that I was part of a team and we evaluated all of our fare collection technologies. So that includes the fare boxes, the TVMs, the card readers that you swipe your card on, mobile ticketing. All of those technologies are, except for the mobile ticketing, they're coming to their end of life. And so what would it take to sort of overhaul and upgrade all of that equipment and software? And it had about $150–60 million price tag over 10 years. And of course, rightly so, one of our trustees, their first question was, well, what if it was free? You don't got to collect anything. So, there's a number of different questions that need to be asked along this path, but I can't predict. I have no idea.
Well, come on, you're a planner, man. No, this has been fabulous, and thank you so much. Let's have a round of applause for our presenter tonight. Yay!
Thank you. And if you bundle up your questions in the chat, I'm happy to. I will type out responses to them all.
Well, fantastic. Well, we've reached our point for a break, and it's I think well deserved. So let's take a break for a good 10 minutes. We'll start back again at 7:06 by my estimation. So have a nice break, and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Coming back from their break. We have just a schedule check-in. It seems odd. Today is Valentine's Day, so maybe we should have taken this day off too. But next week is President's Day, and why we would preference presidents over a holiday based on love, I don't know. I guess that just shows you our values. But at any rate, that's what we're doing. Next week is President's Day. It's an official holiday, so we won't be having class next week. So next week's a week off. We'll be back 2 weeks from today to talk about oops, I was going to say pedestrian and bicycle, and our presenter has schooled me. It's walking and biking. Use the verbs, don't use this technical stuff. And so Tom Millar, who is the walking and biking planner, who also walks and bikes. He's a walking and biking planner, but that's the subject of what he does. He'll be here next week, or 2 weeks from today. And that will be the kind of the end of our presentations. And so 3 weeks from today, we're meeting again to see your projects. Whoa, it happens very quickly. But that's what we're scheduled to do. We won't be seeing all of them 3 weeks today, because that we're going to do it over the course of 2 weeks. So we'll have about half the projects 3 weeks from today, and the other half about 4 weeks from today, and then 5 weeks from today, rolling all the way out to the end of March. We'll have a field trip, and everybody loves a field trip. And so I'm working to see about, and I don't know if Julianne's still on the call here, but she mentioned a project that I had already been thinking about called Life on State. The city and UDOT and South Salt Lake City, and I believe Salt Lake County, are all collaborating to try to make something better out of State Street. I think State Street, along with Redwood Road, are the streets that we love to hate or make fun of, or wring our hands over, or just, shake our heads on what can be done. And it turns out there is a plan, and it's underway. And so they're getting ready to start construction on the first phase of it. And so we thought that makes it a perfect project to go and tour. So that's, again, 5 weeks from today. I know that sounds like it's forever away, but it'll be here before you know it. It's a crazy thing about time. So what I want to do today is, today we've got in our syllabus the topic of presentation, representation of how to take an idea and make it graphic or visual or a map. And I sent out an email a couple days ago over the weekend pointing out the new resources that we have on our webpage. And so if you haven't checked those out, please do. Matt's done a great job in getting us a couple of different pages of links, one for kind of basic research that we talked about 2 weeks ago, and then another for communication and presentation type skills. And so play around with those. Of course, whatever you find there, you will, if you click on those, you will go to either YouTube or some web place that'll take you to other places that you'll find a whole bunch of different kinds of resources. What I thought I would do is maybe to put some of that information in a little bit of context, because once you go down these rabbit holes looking for information on how to create slides, how to take videos, how to take photos, you can get lost in these places, and really want to kind of pull your attention to some really basic things that I think are important to take your project ideas and make them real, because that's what we're here to do. I mentioned this last week. I'll mention it again. It seems that the way in for a lot of citizen ideas to become real projects is through local government. You need a champion. Having a good idea is not sufficient. You need someone who has good political connections, who can endorse it and move it forward. And that seems to be the pathway, regardless of who is planning the project and who's building the project. It could be a project that's regional in scope and scale, and hence would be a part of the regional transportation plan that WFRC does, or it might be something that's statewide or more rural based, And so it would be something that would be in a UDOT plan, or it might be something that's local. But it, regardless of where it lands, it seems that the way in is through your local government, wherever you happen to be living, because those are the people who have the ear. Even if it's a UDOT, ends up being a UDOT project, the people at UDOT are listening to what local government people say. And so, and it's, yeah, the elected officials, the mayors, the city council people, of course, but also the technical staff, the planners, the planning commission members. These are volunteers, or they are employees. They get a lot of cred when it comes to a transportation planning agency trying to figure out how to program and plan their resources. And so what I'm taking away from what I'm hearing from our presenters is, if you have an idea and you want to move it forward, finding a champion at the local government level is really key. So if that is the goal, then the question is, how do you get that champion? How do you get that sponsor, that support on board? And I've got 6 slides on how I see it. Very, very simplistic, but hopefully that's part of the message here, is the simplicity. So let me share, and I will go through them quickly, because quick is important. It's part of the product. So it says presenting a project, how to get in and out and look very knowledgeable. And until a second ago, I had misspelled knowledgeable, and I thought that was rather poetic, but I did correct it. So just 6 slides. The brevity is, I can't emphasize how important it is to be brief and focused. And so if you are presenting an idea, here's how here's the basic structure. You have a lead in, kind of an exposition to state the issue, be it a problem or an opportunity. It's always helpful to have kind of visual representation of that issue, a photo or a short video. And then context. Where does this come from, this opportunity or problem? What are the known causes or contributors to it? Does it have a long history? Then the value proposition. Why do we care? Why does it matter? What's at stake? Are people suffering because of it, or not getting something of value? Who are these people? Tell a story about one of them. People love stories. They want to be able to personalize information. And if you can provide an anecdote, that is key. And then what are the solutions? What can be done about this? Are there alternative ways that you can address it? Which one is the best? Why is that? Again, showing examples through photographic information is an excellent way, so people can see it. It's not just words. And then make the connection. It might be implied, but make it obvious. How will doing that solve the problem or take advantage of that opportunity? Connect the dots for people. Tie that solution to the story about the person that you mentioned before, that anecdote that you might have told. And then get out. You've done your job. You've articulated the problem, showed why it matters, showed alternatives to solving it, made the connections, and said, thank you very much. I'd love to work with your staff. It seems simplistic, but because very often you're given just a few minutes before a planning commission meeting or a city council meeting to have the microphone, and you don't always get the chance to put slides up. You sometimes have to do it verbally, but if you can tell that story using those touch points and do it in about 3 or 4 minutes, you're going to get a lot further than if it takes longer to do that. And I've just taken a total of 10 minutes to tell you that. So you might ask whether I follow my own advice here. All right, so what your task tonight is to kind of take your project ideas to the next level. And maybe using this structure that I just outlined, and I'll put the basic outline in the chat. So if you want to use that, and provide some feedback to each other on what you're working on and what your ideas are. And as usual, Matt and I will circulate around and provide help and assistance and comments as we can. And I look forward to seeing you guys all in your small groups.
All right, I'll launch the breakout rooms now. Hey, Allie, is there a room you'd like to join?
I'm still here in the dark. Matt, the website's looking good. I like the class synopses and the fact that you can link to the YouTube channels in there, or the YouTube videos. Class 3 video is not, it's the link doesn't appear to be live. It's like it's static.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll circle back and take a look at that. I was having a hard time embedding it, but I thought it was just because it uploaded as private initially. But
It's just showing, like, I see the URL, but I don't see like I can't click on the video.
oh, okay. Yeah, I'll get that
Might just be
sorted.
me. I don't know.
No, it seems like I was having an issue with it too, so it could be an overall thing too.